I will today present you a personal project I'm working on. I named it Docker Monitor. I was not so inspired for the name, so sorry. I will just start by just introduce myself a bit. I will present you an overview of the project, and I will finish with a demonstration on some idea I have for improvement. If you have some feedbacks, I'm open to suggestions in order to improve the project. Just a few things about myself. So my name is Dexter. I'm basically come from Paris, so sorry for the bad accent in English. I'm a web developer, mostly front-end oriented, but I also work on the backend side, mostly with Node.js or Java, more specifically Spring Boot. I'm currently consultant for the company Acodis. You can reach me out from LinkedIn, GitHub, or also on the Discord of the Montreal Flutter event. First things, I just realized it a few minutes ago. Who are familiar with Docker? Just a bit. Okay, that's good. That means I don't have to explain too much what is Docker. What is the motivation I have for this project? Like most of you, I work by myself in order to improve some subjects. My motivation to start this project is that I discovered Flutter with Billy 2 years ago for one project when I was in France. Since then, I didn't have the opportunity to work on it. So in order to not lost all knowledge I acquired on this Flutter, I just practice by myself, so that's why I also work on this project. My goal is to implement also to see how we can implement a clean architecture in Flutter. The second goal was also to discover Python, because Python is a really powerful programming language. With Python, you have also a great part for network programming, which I need also for my project, specifically for my project. The goal of the project itself actually is to implement a dashboard to manage your Docker container. It's not something new, actually. You already encounter it with container or even with Docker desktop. But as I said before, it was just a personal challenge. This is just a screenshot to show you what the UI look like. To be honest with you, I started the project and I didn't think about responsive. So if there is some UX UI people in the audience, if you have suggestions to improve some few things, I'm open to them. I'm really focused on functionality in general. As a front-end, I know it's bad. You have also to care about the UX UI. But on my side, when I start a project, I first think about what is the functionality, what is the purpose of my of the functionality I want to implement, instead of what is the core, what is the general aspect of the project. About the stack, so since it's a Flutter Meetup, you guess that the front end is a Flutter application. I choose also Flutter because I want to experiment what is possible to do with Flutter Web, because as we explained during this presentation, Flutter basically starts with mobile cross-platform. So you have Android and iOS. Recently, you have also the web part is not so used. It's still mobile for the moment, but some few companies and people use it for web development. So the application is really a basic one, like you encounter with, for instance, when you do it with a React or Vue.js. It's really a simple front-end application. Doing HTTP requests to an API built with Flask. For people who don't know, Flask is just a simple framework built with Python. In order to communicate with Docker on my machine, on my system. I work mostly on virtual machine. On my side, it's Linux. In order to communicate with the Docker installed on my virtual machine, I use a library, which the name is Python Docker SDK. So this library was built in order to communicate with the Docker SDK on your system. This drawing is to give you a better insight of what is inside my Flutter application. So you have the presentation layer or the UI part. Like Vue.js, React.js, you building a component. Each of your components have a single responsibility in general when you want to build a proper architecture. When user make an action on the UI, it triggers an event. In order to manage the state of the application, so the state management, I use, basically I was on provider, but now I'm starting to migrating to Block. So Block handle each event. Trigger also the call to the services, so to the API, and then when Block retrieves the data, you can update your state and then give the state to the UI in order to the UI to re-render and change its behavior according to the data you have on the state you have. So I will go on a small demonstration of what is the project currently look like. Sorry, I forgot to say one thing. In order to automate the process of deployment for my Flutter application, I choose to use GitHub Action because GitHub Action provides some small packages in order to help you some recipe, let's say, in order to deploy more easier your application on different platforms. I choose Firebase because Firebase is mostly used with Flutter in general. That's help you to deploy static resources. You can also use it for Angular application or even for React application. There is multiple solutions, but according to the research I do, it seems to be the best solution for Flutter. Just switch. So this is the interface. Yeah, as I told you, I didn't manage the responsive for the moment, just a functionality. So this is a normal interface. You have the list of all Docker container running, and I just have one on my server. You can do the basic action you have on. You can do all basic action you're doing in general with Docker container. You can start and stop your container. For instance, for that one, I can start it. Normally, it doesn't take too long. So that's help you to see to change the state of each of your Docker container. You have also some metrics about your container. I don't know why. Maybe if I just zoom a bit, I think it's better. You can drag and drop an image in order to create an image for your Docker container. I can show you. Where is it again? Document. I have a lot of files to do some things. So I just put a small toast in order to confirm. If the image has been created. To show you a piece of code of what happened inside. Yeah. So, as I said before, I try to respect as much as possible the principle of clean architecture. So I separate each part of the application into, let's say, logic folder. So you have the UI part, which concentrates all component I have. I separate my components in two categories. One is for the different views. I already have one for the moment, but if I have more in the future, there is more views for more components for each view. I have also shared component I reused for across the application. For instance, board panel. Where is it again? No, component. Board panel is what you can see here. Is each panel of the application. So you can. The panel is simply a widget that have a shape. You can give the shape that you want, or you can put a content on it. For instance, the part where you can drag and drop a file to create your image. This is the panel, and then the content inside, so the button, the drag and drop part on the preview of what you have is all the widgets you can include inside. So you can reuse this component in order to, if you have more panel to add to the view, you can add it and manage it as you wish, as you want. For the state management, as I said, I used basically provider where I start to migrate on block. So where is it again? Module. Where is it? Provide models. Oh my bad. I'm not good. Bullet table. No, that's not that one. Oh my bad. I'm not at the good French. I'm really sorry. It's more the refactoring one, I think. Yeah, I'm actually on refactoring process where they have a lot of stuff I probably change. So, as I said, I changed the structure a bit. I was basically on provider. I switched to block. Why I switched to block? Because I have multiple events to manage on the application. When you start a container, when you stop it, each action you can do. You have also the animation you can see before when I start the container, and you have the bubble loading. So in block, you can manage each state of your action. For instance, when I launch container, much more. Where is it? Was it there? Yeah. For instance, for the list of all the container I have to react some specific event in order to show the user that the action he do is on process. So when I click on the button in order to start a container, for instance, I have to check the action is launched. Since it's an asynchronous process because you make a call API, you need to make a loader to signify your user that the process is running. And I have three states for this. The first state, is the initial state. So the action of starting, we launch the action of starting the container. So we bubble an event. The container is on update process. Then we receive the response of the code API, and then we have the process of finish. So the container has been updated, and then I can send this information, the new state, to my UI in order to update it and say to the view that, okay, you don't have to display the loader anymore. You have to display now the new state of the Docker container. So that's prevent also the situation you encountered before that sometime you have to fetch again the whole list that you have in order to retrieve the new information. On my side, I didn't fetch the whole list. I just fetch only the elements which change because I provide the ID in order to start my container. So I have only few features of this project because I started few months ago. I working on my free time when I have some time to improve myself. I want to training. I want to improve this project now. I have some few ideas, but I'm not sure where I have to start. Currently, according to the drawing you see before, you have two main blocks on the architecture. The first block is a Flutter application, which is hosted on Firebase host. The second block is running on my local machine. What I try to do now is to separate these two parts. So running the Flask application aside, let's say it would be on cloud, maybe AWS or specific server. The third part would be a server which only running the Docker process. But the things I don't know how to manage for the moment is how to connect to the remote server and then connect to the talk directly to the Docker SDK. Now it's working because it's on my machine, but if I remove Docker on my machine, it doesn't work anymore, so I have to find a way to manage this. So separate each block in order to have a scalable architecture, let's say. The other part is to have a send notification system. I suppose there is some DevOps in the audience. Maybe sometime you need some tools in order to receive a notification directly when you have some issue or default on your system. So you can react directly and took all the measure in order to manage this. I just specify a few tools, but I don't really sure how to which tool to use. You have Twilio, you have Firebase, Trigger Pub. So the third idea I have is to use database in order to store all action or all elements a user do on the interface, so you can track which people do whatever action, and then implement maybe a shared UI. I suppose that some people already see it on AWS or GCP. You have a shared in order to type your comments, so you can, if you're more accustomed to the shared prompt, you can use it. I forgot to say one thing, Raspberry, for people who are not familiar with Flutter, the project I developed, I made it for web because I want to test on web, but you can use the same code because it's that's the base of Flutter in order to make it responsive and have a mobile view, or if you have some other device you want to use for this kind of application. Some resources I use for this project. So you have the documentation of Python Docker SDK. You have the pubdev package, which give you, it's like the site of NPM. You know, you can find all the library you want in order to implement, if you want to implement a new component on your application. One difficulty I encounter also, it's pretty much common, I think, in general, is like, and it's also an advice I give you. When you implement your application, you have to check on pubdev if the library you are using is compatible with the platform you are using. For instance, for the drop zone widget I took, it's work on mobile, web, and also on Windows and Linux. But for some packages, they are not compatible with all platforms, so you have to be care about this fact. You have the link to the repo, so you can, if you are interested, you can check, make some suggestion maybe. Also an explanation. The last link is just an explanation of how to implement a drop zone for Flutter. That's pretty much for me. Thanks for your attention. I hope that's it was interesting for you. Thank you.
Anyone have some question?
Yeah.
Thank you. Very, very good. Very interesting application of Flutter. It occurs to me. And what I'm thinking about is once you decouple your server from the Flask API, will you be able to introduce some orchestration tools? I would imagine you would be able to use Flutter to build additional resources to orchestrate and scale the containers, and probably build multiple. I imagine you can only handle one container instance at a time. Maybe you'll expand on that. Thank you.
That's a good question. I didn't think about orchestration because I'm not really familiar with it. I know there exists Kubernetes, K8s. The goal is not, somehow the project goes in the direction that it looks like an orchestration tool, but it's not really what I want so far. I just want a simple application when you can connect to a server or manage a Docker container. Some company, I noticed that some companies want to use external tools like cloud system. So sometimes they want to have their own tools they manage, and they are sure that they can handle all the things, and there is no some black layer or black box they didn't control. So my goal throughout this is really to have a simple tools, simple as possible.
Very good. Anyone else?
Nice presentation. So, what was your biggest challenge with your application?
It was with the how to manage each step, each state of my application. For instance, when you launch, when you are changing the state of your container, you have different steps. You click on the button when you're bubbling an event, but there is 3 steps actually. On my case, there is 3 steps before the update of the state of the container appear. You have the moment when you launch the process. You have the time between you just before you finish, so in changing, and you have finished. You finished it. The thing is how manage this, because it's an asynchronous process. By researching, and also thanks Billy for your help about this. It's the block pattern. The block pattern is a tool that helps you to manage the state of your application. Block allow you to manage multiple states that an event can take. My challenge here was to identify which event exactly I have on my application and how to select it in order to manage it properly. It was somehow a big challenge, and I didn't finish with it because I just managed for the moment the changing of the state of the Docker container. But I have much more events. For instance, when I create an image, it's also an event that you have. So for the moment, I didn't manage it, but when you click on the button and you create the image, I have a poster which appears, but I didn't manage it for the moment with blocks. But my final goal is to have somehow a new UI, construct a new UI based on events, so somehow event-driven.
Thank you for your presentation. I was curious about like Flutter being able to be compiled across platform, but you can also make it like a desktop application, right?
Yeah, that's also works. I think I can maybe run it. I will test.
But I was curious about one more thing. When you are like embedding the application as a desktop application, can it embed like the backend, the Python backend with it?
The Python backend works separately, so it's just an API. So since you have connection, you can make a request. So whatever where is you running the application on your own laptop, if you just have the link to connect to the API, so you can make any request that you want. To answer to your first question, it's a bit small, but can you see here, I'm running on Chrome.
Okay.
So you can choose which platform you want to run your application on, and you can even choose Linux. Enable Linux for this project, so you can have a real desktop application.
Okay, thank you.
I just want to add something to the last question because sometimes people is asking, Flutter is able to build the output for many platforms. So yes, Flutter is cross-platform, but one of the challenges is the fact that you cannot build for every platform really. If you're using Windows, Linux, for example, you won't be able to build your output for Mac. So that's something that you need to keep in mind. And every time people say it's cross-platform, they assume that when you will build the application, you will have the output for every platform. Not really. You will need, for example, Mac that enable you to have the output for Linux, but you won't be able to have the output for Windows. Just
It's the same with the Electron actually.
yeah. So that's training people. Sometimes they assume that it's cross-platform that you will have every output.
You want to introduce yourself?
Oh yeah, go.
Well, okay. If you want me to introduce myself, I'll do it. I'm a Flutter GDE, so that means a Google developer expert. And very happy to see that, and maybe next time I will present something.
Thank you very much.
Just to continue the subject, like for example, Electron. With Electron, you can launch a server inside Electron, and with you have the front part, and you can launch a server inside because you have the HTTP API. I think it's possible. So if you have you build for Windows, for example, I think you can access to the HTTP and do a listen inside. So you can, like now he's using Python, but if he were using Dart, he can launch a server inside the Dart part. So, yeah, it's possible, but maybe not with Python. Yeah.
Maybe I can say some word on that. Obviously, I think it's possible. I think there's no reason not possible. I think even on the web, I think it's possible. Because what you want to connect is localhost, so there's no cross the origin stuff. So I think he only did it on purpose because he wanted to test with the Python together, but technically I think it's possible. Right, I take that there's no more question. Okay, so I think, thank you, Dexter.
Thank you very much.